Hi, I'm Bill Allred. Welcome to episode 7 of What Do You Think, Utah? This episode is called Halloween, Trick or Treat. Halloween. How in the world did this holiday ever become such a big deal? Halloween is now the second biggest commercial holiday next to Christmas. And that's because it's not just for kids anymore. Halloween used to be just for kids, and I got that. Halloween was all about the candy, or as I like to say, it was all about the candy. Now, sure, most kids like putting on a costume too. I mean, I didn't really like doing that. I only put on the costume because I had to put on the costume to get the candy. And you can tell which kids on your porch today are really into the costume thing and which ones are just putting on a costume to get the candy, right? I mean, there are kids there who really go into the costume thing. You can tell they put a lot of work in, and then there are kids there who put on a trench coat and they're just doing it so they're there to get the candy. But really, Halloween was all about going door to door and getting as much candy as you could. You did this until you were 13 or so, and then Halloween just stopped. Adults didn't do much with Halloween. They just stayed home, they drank some wine while all the kids went out and trick-or-treated. Or here in Utah, they stayed home and they didn't drink wine. What did they do? They stayed home and had Diet Coke. And Halloween has become the commercial behemoth of the day, though, because somewhere along the line, adults decided to get involved in Halloween. But why? What is it about Halloween that appeals to grown-ups? And why in Utah, a state with strong conservative religious bent, should Halloween be so popular? I mean, there are plenty of haunted houses filled to capacity tonight. Probably 10 haunted houses from Logan to Provo, all of them celebrating things unsavory and unsettling. This is a holiday that buries the notion of shame and taunts sacred values. And I remember when it was just about the candy. So now let's meet our guests. This woman right here with the phone who's periscoping.
We're periscoping.
Is
I think
Cydney
this is really
Neil.
Super awkward too.
It is super awkward, Cydney, but go ahead and do it. This is Cydney Neil. Cydney was the producer and creative director of the legendary Rocky Point Haunted House, one of the most iconic and successful haunted attractions in history here in Utah, and actually known all around the United States and even internationally, I would say. Under her direction, Rocky Point went from 100 guests and $500 in income to nearly 70,000 guests and over $1.5 million in its closing year. Rocky Point generated international recognition and dozens of awards. Her marketing and business plans have been used by many of the top haunts and set designs. Her set designs have inspired many in the haunt industry. All of this earning her the title of, are you ready? The Queen of the Haunts. Cydney said, and this is not just
my claim to fame.
There are magazines and all kinds of publications devoted to this industry, and you'll find Cydney featured prominently in these magazines. Cydney says her greatest achievement is her youth program that changed the lives of thousands of misfit kids that she will always consider her own, and we'll talk about that coming up.
Okay.
Our next guest, Lindsay Hansen-Park, is a women's rights activist, a feminist blogger, and an advocate against gender violence. I should say she is a Mormon feminist blogger. She is the assistant director for the Sunstone Foundation and the founder of the Story of Woman podcast. She blogs for feministmormonhousewives.org about women's issues and is currently heavily involved in the Mormon feminist movement. Her work has appeared in the New York Times, the Washington Post, NPR, the Los Angeles Times, and many other Utah publications. And I read on her blog bio that she loves Halloween.
I do love Halloween. Mormons, we love Halloween.
Mormons love Halloween, and we'll get into that. Next, TaMara Gold. She is a practicing witch and the owner of Crones Hollow, which is a pagan Wicca witchcraft supply store and pagan community center in Salt Lake. She's been walking a pagan path for 20 years, first as a solitary Wiccan, and then as a practitioner of family traditional witchcraft. TaMara considers herself a hedge witch. We'll find out what that is, and has been part of a local witchcraft coven for the last 10 years. She's been a local coordinator of Salt Lake City Pagan Pride and a founder of the Utah Black Hat Society. She can often be found behind the counter at Crones Hollow, working on spell candles and magical oil blends. TaMara is also a crystal ball reader and participates as a psychic medium in the monthly seances which are held at Crones Hollow. And next, but certainly not least, Jay Whittaker.
Hey, good morning.
Hi, Jay. Jay is a comedian, an actor, host, and writer born in Los Angeles, California, who dreamed of being a superhero.
That's right.
And many would say maybe is a superhero.
Possibly.
The Avengers never called him, though, so he tried comedy instead. Since then, he's been traveling and performing at clubs, concerts, and festivals, giving audiences his humorous take on life, parenting, romance, and all things geeky. He's heard all over as a panelist on the popular Geek Show podcast. And while Jay may not have any superpowers, he did recently win Utah's Best Comedian Award in 2014.
Wow.
Wasn't really recent.
What?
Wasn't really recent, but you know.
Well, that's fairly. That was last year.
Okay, fair.
That's recent.
I got an old bio.
You might win it this year. You could win it this year.
No, it already happened.
Oh.
Yeah, so I
You
mean,
didn't win it?
No, I took a year off.
Oh. All right. Thanks for being here, Jay.
Thanks for having me.
A question for each one of you. You all like Halloween? Yeah. Do you like Halloween, Jay?
I knew this question. Not really.
You don't like Halloween?
It's just another, I mean, I like the candy. I mean, I have a ginormous sweet tooth, so I like candy corn, Skittles, Starburst. Had about 5 on the way here, 5 bags.
5 bags of Starburst on the way here?
Well, I have this specific way that I eat Starburst. You open this one side, and then you take the wrapper out and put it on the other side, and you push it through like this little conveyor belt of Starburst. Anyways, that's a whole nother story.
Yeah. But Halloween has never had any special meaning for you?
No, I grew up in Los Angeles. Every day was scary. So like it's just like what? It's another day with just black and orange. I mean, like I'm not a Cincinnati Bengals fan either. So the whole day just kind of is like, all right. I mean, it's cool, but.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to talk to you about maybe when you were a kid, and we'll get to it in a minute.
Right.
Going trick or treating. I want to picture little Jay Whittaker in Los Angeles trick or treating. We'll get to that in a second. Okay.
Yeah, it'll be very different from everything you'll hear tonight.
So be thinking about that. But let's talk to TaMara for a second. You're not a Wiccan, right?
I'm not. I'm a traditional witch.
You're a witch.
I am.
What's the difference?
Witch is a person that follows a particular path of craft. It is like the craft of learning. A blacksmith learns the craft of smithing, and witches learn the craft of witching. A Wiccan is one that reveres the goddess. It's a religion where craft is not as a spiritual path.
So what is the craft of witching?
Well, it can be a lot of different things. It could be working with herbs. It could be divination. It could be being a psychic medium. Mm-hmm. You'll figure it out.
And what's your particular craft?
I work specifically with spell candles, and I am a psychic crystal ball reader.
Hell yeah.
What are spell candles?
A spell candle is when you take a candle and you carve sigils in it, and you work with the candle magically and imbue it with energies, and you do that for a specific purpose.
Can you do bad things to people?
You can. Is it a good idea? No.
Yeah.
This is where we call the town constable right now and tell him we've got a witch amongst
Bring
us.
the torches.
Burn the witch. Burn.
I say hang out with her.
Yeah. or befriend the witch.
Yeah.
Befriend the witch. What is this time of year, Halloween, a special time for people who are witches?
It is. Halloween means All Hallows Eve, and it is called Samhain in the pagan paths. That's spelled Samhain, pronounced Samhain, not Samhain. It is the time when the veil between the worlds is very thin, and you can make contact with those that have passed on. And so workings for the dead are done at this time, whether it's done through ritual to help them pass to their final destination, or it can be done through the form of honoring them at a dumb supper. So there are a lot of different rituals and activities that take advantage of the thinness of the veil and the ability to communicate.
How many people would you say there are in Salt Lake that are doing this right now, who believe what you do and are using this time of the year to contact people beyond the veil? And
You know, it's hard to say. The very word occult means hidden. So a lot of people practice their craft off in the dark. But my guess, just from watching the number of people that move in and out of Crones Hollow, is that there are at least 10 to 15,000 in Salt Lake City that actively practice some form of craft.
really?
That's awesome.
Why do you say that's awesome?
No, I mean, it's just like, I think that's cool just because the fact that there's just, even though it's considered a small community by those numbers, but I mean, like, everybody has their day, you know, and their time of year where they get all festive and well, I won't say festive. I don't know if that's I don't know the
With
proper
the dead's
word.
not exactly festive.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, like, who knows? But I mean, like, I just think that's really cool, you know.
Thank
Well,
you.
I mean, contacting the dead can be festive. It's the Day of the Dead celebrations in the Mexican tradition. It's quite festive. It's a little bit later. What is it? November
November the 1st.
November
Yeah, it's
1st,
the day after,
and
yeah.
you go to the cemetery.
And have a picnic.
and have picnics and contact your, you know, to kind of revere your ancestors and the spirits of your ancestors perhaps come forth, and you can. So I guess that's kind of festive.
And you're using a lot of Mormon language, like veils and, you know, the veil being very thin. That's a very Mormon thing, too. Not to say that you borrowed that from Mormons, but I have a book you can read if you're interested. Just kidding.
Sure.
I'm kidding.
Now, Ms. Hansen-Park, as a Mormon feminist,
Oh, you did
now,
it.
now this is a festive Halloween. Thank
Oh,
you, Chase.
golly.
This is a festive Halloween episode of What Do You Think, Utah? Now, before the show began, we said we had these Halloween cocktails available, and Lindsay could not believe that there was a drink available here.
There's bacon in a drink. It's like,
if
how
you-
far have we come, America, to
it's
this?
very normal.
Like,
If
you
you've
put
got-
a
if
man
you
on the
could even have
moon,
a-
and now we're putting bacon in a
But
drink.
you can even have a virgin Bloody Mary, and it would you'd be like, wow, this is actually really good. People drink tomato juice on flights when they're on the airport because it fills them up. If you fly regularly, tomato juice and Bloody Marys will keep your stomach calm because you.
I feel like I need to confess to my bishop just looking at it, like
Just
being in the
looking at-
same room.
Now this
I'm
is
so
this
sorry.
is. I'll just give it a little taste here.
Guys, it's bacon. And what's the alcohol? Is that vodka? What is it?
No, it's
It's good.
a traditional Bloody Mary would have vodka or sometimes gin. This has tequila.
It's a Bloody Maria.
It's an
Yeah.
abomination, is what it is. I feel like the Bible is like blowing up right now.
Again, being a goodly Mormon woman, you have no basis to pass judgment upon
I
this.
feel like torn. I feel torn that way, but as an American, I feel like I have to like love it,
now
like,
look,
worship it.
See, there you go. Look, see there.
How do you know
my
you don't
goodness.
like
Yeah.
it?
Let's do it together, man. There you go.
I don't know what is happening right now.
Look.
Just think of this as it's a learning experience.
Yeah, I am getting a cultural awakening right now.
Very.
Wow, two guys eating Bloody
Halloween.
Marys, a cultural awakening in Utah?
Listen,
Hilarious.
my worldview might be a little bit limited.
Okay, for
Delicious.
those of us just joining on the Periscope, this show was supposed to be about Halloween. So it's digressed.
it's
Jason
going back.
was super cute though. He
bacon-flavored
wanted me to
drinks,
tell him how cute it is.
which is kind
It
of
is a very
scary.
cute drink.
No, we're going back to Halloween. Now, Halloween in Utah. You love Halloween.
I do.
Now, you love Halloween in more. Talk about why you love Halloween and how you love Halloween as a Mormon woman.
I mean, I think it's a little bit embarrassing, but like I love Halloween. It's like bigger than Christmas at our house. We have like, you know how you can have like the little Christmas villages? We have little Halloween villages, and like it grows every year because my friends give us one every year, so it's like taking over the house. And I don't know, I just have always loved it. We were talking about this earlier, but as a kid, one of my favorite things to do was go to Rocky Point Haunted House. I just have so many memories there, and then having my own kids, it's really fun that my kids just know that Halloween is like our thing.
Now, going to haunted houses, and we'll talk to Cydney about Rocky Point here in a second. Haunted houses often of the other world that are evil. Why is it that a good Mormon person would like to do that?
Well, I mean, certainly I grew up with Mormon kids that like weren't allowed to go, or if they were really great, they chose not to go to haunted houses. But for the majority of us, we would go, and I think it's like, you know, Mormons have these sort of unique, I'm not going to say weird, unique dating rituals, and it was a way for 14-year-old girls and boys to snuggle up against each other if they saw something, you know, devilish. If it was too devilish, you know, you just ran past it. But I think it was a safe way to interact with things that we're not allowed to interact with. So, and pay some money and then go get hot chocolate after.
I was reading a Mormon blog. A woman, it was the don'ts about Halloween from a Mormon blog by somebody named Jana Reese.
Oh yeah, Jana's a good friend of mine.
Was it like the 18 rules or something?
Well, it's things that you shouldn't do at Halloween.
Yeah, I read this, and
if you're a good Mormon person, don't let your daughter dress like a hooker.
Yeah. Well, that's not just Halloween. That's all the time.
Well,
so.
sure, but I mean, she gave an example of. She said, "Now here's a Dorothy costume, Dorothy from the Wizard of Oz, and there was one where the costume looked like, what's her name, the star of the movie."
Judy Garland.
Judy Garland, thank you. Looked like Judy Garland. The costume looked like Judy Garland, and then there was another.
It was like sexy.
It was like
Judy
slutty
Garland.
Judy Garland.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, with garters and so forth. So don't let your daughter dress like a hooker.
I have a story about that because I went to Disneyland because I'm Mormon and I love Disneyland, and I dressed as Little Red Riding Hood, right? And I had like the cape and the dress, and I was feeling really great. And all these women come in dressed as like sexy Little Red Riding Hood, and I was just like, who am I right now?
Yep.
Yeah.
No, yeah. And then she said, no masks.
No masks. It's a thing.
There's apparently a church handbook of instruction which says you really aren't supposed to wear masks ever.
Church 13.6, yeah, it's in our handbook.
Why?
Ah.
May I ask why?
So, yeah, well, growing up, like, we're told, like, oh, it's just for safety. Like, my husband and I were talking about this. Oh, it's so you don't trip, like when you're trick-or-treating, just like a liability thing. But actually, one of our apostles, Elder Quentin Cook, gave a talk about it in 2014, saying specifically don't wear masks, and he related it to the Ku Klux Klan and to the mobs who painted their faces black to kill Joseph Smith. And then he related it to like online bullying or something, but yeah, it's a thing.
Yeah, don't. He said apparently in the handbook it says don't wear masks of any kind ever except
for drama.
In a play.
And it also says you can dress like Jesus in a drama, but you have to take it off really quick and like can't be seen in the halls of the church with it. But you can never dress like God or the Holy Ghost. So
Like what about the Lone Ranger?
I feel like that's legit.
Yeah,
might be
Batman.
a little
Batman.
racist, but legit. So
Yeah, maybe not Batman.
Definitely not the devil though. Like
Yeah.
we don't do that either.
And then the third one was avoid gore, death, fear, and focus on the silly stuff. So you didn't do that by going to Rocky Point.
Yeah, well, I never said I was a good Mormon. I'm not like bacon drinking Bloody Mary Mormon, but I'm not like, I went to haunted houses.
Let's talk to Cydney now about, because we've been talking about haunted houses and Rocky Point.
Right.
And you are the queen of the haunts. Talk about how you got into doing that and the story of Rocky Point.
This is where it gets really awkward with the periscope because, like, I guess you can just turn this around and look at the back of my head.
Sure.
Can I
Well, you can look at it. Or...
Okay, so you should ask the question again. Sorry.
Okay. Well, now
I'm your
I don't know what
worst
we're
guest
seeing. I don't
ever.
know what we're seeing
It's okay.
on the periscope here.
We're seeing your fingers.
Cydney is trying to periscope this
Sorry.
while we're.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Dylan
And
is
it's-
going to come on
and
stage
it's
and do it.
super awkward.
Dylan
and I
will do
want to
it.
just interrupt it
Our
and,
stage
and
manager
say,
will do
if
it.
you want to watch the rest of this, tell them where to go. And don't tell me where to go, though.
ThinkUtah.org. Oh, by the way, if anybody, if you
ThinkUtah.org.
want to share experiences about Halloween, you may. There's a microphone over there.
So we can just send them to thinkutah.org,
Yeah.
and then they can finish up the show there.
Okay.
How's that?
You're periscopers?
Yeah.
Okay.
So thanks for joining us. And if you go to thinkutah.org, you can watch the rest of the show and then join me on my haunt tour starting again tomorrow. Thanks.
Yeah, I don't
Okay.
know if he knows how to turn it off.
I think he can handle it.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, let's talk about Halloween, Rocky Point, and all of that.
And I don't like Halloween. I
Isn't that
don't know
weird?
that I ever liked Halloween.
You monster.
You're my new best friend.
See, and I don't like it either.
You guys, what?
Well, it's just, I think I remember liking to go get the candy, the canny, and that was about it. We did, we liked the Munsters. That was a good show, the Addams Family. Remember all those great TV shows we watched? Friday night, Nightmare Theater, we
Yeah.
used to stay up and watch. So I guess I liked things like that. But I certainly couldn't ever have imagined doing a haunted attraction for my career, and being known as the Queen of Haunts was kind of the last thing I would have imagined for my life and my career. But
Now, I don't know if you want to touch on this, but we were talking a few days ago, and I didn't know this about you, but you were a missionary.
yeah, so I have some things in common. I'm not a witch, but I've been called maybe that on occasion. But I do spells. Yeah, I'm Mormon, grew up Mormon, and I don't remember there ever being, I don't know all these rules about being a Mormon, though. I think that's why I like being a Mormon, because I never pay attention to the rules.
That's how she ended up
So-
as the queen of the haunts.
No. So you tell a story about your father and going on your mission and coming back.
So we built a restaurant in Ogden called the Rocky Point Restaurant in 1965, had a fire in 1968. My father went away. We kind of walked away from it and left it vacant for 10 years before
It was a beautiful restaurant up on a big rocky point
Right.
Outside of Ogden.
That was a real thing.
Yeah.
I heard that that was the lore, but that really
No,
happened.
it was a real thing. A big circular,
big, beautiful, yeah.
big round,
Cool.
beautiful restaurant on a outcropping of rock in the northern part of Ogden.
Yeah, it was very successful. It was probably the most premier restaurant in the state of Utah at the time. But after only opening 3 years, because of a fire, we had to close. And so it sat vacant while my father went and did another business. And while it was sitting vacant, it had all these rumors of people dying up there and it being an Indian burial ground. And this is probably the things that you heard. And so it was already had this rumor about it being haunted. And my younger brother, who had seen a little spook alley at something he had gone to, decided he would use our property to do a haunted house for their charity. So he did it in 1979, and there just wasn't a lot of haunted. I think the JCs used to do haunted houses, and the churches used to have little spook alleys, they were called at the time. But it was successful right from the beginning, and so he left, another group came in called the Maniacs, and this was like the original goths. They had permanent teeth, fangs put on. They were very talented, but kind of a party group. I went on a mission, long story about that, but came back and went to help my father because he had come back to restore the building, and this haunted house was there. So I tried to actually kick him off the property and ended up getting involved, and it was the last year I was doing this, and it certainly wasn't cool and happening and hip like it is now. There was no Walking Dead films that are super popular, anything like that. I couldn't even tell my friends what I was doing. So I just kept doing it. It just kept getting bigger, and we involved a charity, and we raised money for them. And then I started bringing my friends in from LA and having acting workshops and makeup effects workshops, just to kind of train this group of volunteers. And it just kept growing. Then I started a second show, and it turned into something I didn't want to do to something that I did for 23 years. And it was the first professional haunted attraction in the world, and really was one of the pioneers of a huge industry now. We went to China.
It's fascinating that the haunt industry really, and it's big all over the country now.
Well, now it's big all over the world.
Really, and all over the world, started in Ogden and then in Salt Lake. And I mean, really is you were describing, I think before we started the show, going through the Walking Dead attraction
in San Diego Comic-Con.
In San Diego Comic-Con, a giant haunt kind of thing at the
scared the crap out of me.
Yeah, at the arena, the Padres baseball arena, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I will not do that again.
And a gigantic haunt there. I mean, that all got its start kind of here.
Well, we were the first professional haunted attraction of our size, and mostly because I wasn't in the haunted attraction business. I'd done big events, I'd worked with my father in business, I was into fashion and film, and my friends were, so I kind of took everything from different worlds, from the business world, from the event world, and I had a haunted house, so I just used all those skills and created a very successful haunted attraction. It's kind of like love. If you can't be with the one you love the one you're with. And so I learned to love the one I was with. But I always said, I loved what I did, and mostly what I did was I had a youth program. I used the haunted house to run my youth program. And it was about finding the light in the darkness, really. It was just, for me, it was a big mask. And maybe the Mormons say you shouldn't wear a mask, but in this case, my business was a facade for thousands of kids who really wouldn't be comfortable in a church play or anything really mainstream. They were, I called them my misfits. Lady Gaga calls them her little monsters, but I called them my misfits. And none of us really fit in somewhere, but everybody fit at Rocky Point, and it was a very structured program, very positive program. I based my business, I talk about it all the time, on love And so it was an interesting place to play out this sort of heaven and hell, but it really looked like darkness. So for me, it was all a big facade and a mask for what I was really doing, which was helping these kids really find out who they were, and it was very healing for them. So I have a different take on the whole thing, from Mormonism to Halloween to haunted houses.
It's a pretty interesting take on that. I think that kids that you looked at it not as being dark and ghoulish at all, but something the opposite of that, even though that was the face you were presenting.
Well, we didn't present. I didn't present any gore. I wasn't really. I mean, I guess there was some chainsaws.
But they didn't have the things
a few
on them,
knives,
right?
Yeah.
A few knives and things, but you know, we did things after the movies, so the slashers were always part of that. But it was very low gore. I don't like any of the gore stuff. It was, you know, it was something I had to get used to. I had to really accept that I was doing. So, but as a designer, and your wife knows this too, working with me, because I think she learned to love it too. The depth of designing in that aesthetic was so much more interesting because, and I call it the depth of death, and I've come to appreciate it, just the beauty in that part of the life cycle, the death part and the darkness. And I just think it's something we shouldn't be afraid of. I really don't like crossing a line into gore and devilish things or things like that.
Is that your Mormon part, or is that just like an ethical?
You know, I do think that there's things that help us and things that tear us down, and I think there's a line there. And for me, it just was about being comfortable there. You know, that wasn't who I was, so I had a beautiful haunted house.
You seem to have a good feeling about that, or
Yeah, just because of the fact, like, I would go to the idea of a haunted house to me is, and like, no disrespect to anybody, but it's just like the idea of a haunted house is, in my childhood, I witnessed enough violence and gore firsthand, so why the hell would I want to see that shit? Like, it was just like, why? Why would I pay money to go see this, where I could walk up the street, see this for free, and then cry about it later? So that's the whole idea of it is just like, in prior relationships, I would go to a haunted house. Yeah, and I would do it, I guess, to hold a hand. But I'd end up, you know, I'm pretty fast on my feet. I'd leave because it's just like this whole experience is like, I wouldn't mind that if it's scary, like, you get me. But when it gets to the gory stuff, that's where I'm like, all right, I'm done. And
are you the same way with movies? Do you tend to steer away from the gory movies?
I mostly watch comedies and romantic comedies. My favorite movie, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. We'll watch it all the time. Stole the poster when it first came out. Kate Hudson is hanging up in my living room as we speak. I love that canary yellow dress that she wore and the canary yellow diamonds. When Matthew McConaughey looks at her as she walks down the stairs, he is utterly, and he says, all right, all right. She is utterly breathtaking. Love the movie. Back to haunted houses. Yes.
Let's talk a little, and I want to come back to, you've been going on a big tour of haunted houses around the country, and I want to know kind of what they've become and what they're like, and we'll talk about that. But I want to go back now to Jay for a second, because I want to imagine little Jay Whittaker, and you alluded to your childhood, and so you grew up in a rough...
I grew up in Inglewood in the 80s, which was not great.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't have to tell you that. You can watch documentaries or go see Straight Outta Compton, see what you want, whatever your poison is. I dressed up. I remember my first costume as when I was 5 years old was a devil ninja, which I thought was hilarious. Because I saw the horns and the tail, and I was like, let's combine this with a ninja costume. And it just worked. And
How old were you?
I was 5. It was great, you know. And then I still will do that as a 32-year-old male. And
Might be a superhero.
Respect.
it's comfortable.
Now, did you go, was there trick-or-treating in your
We only went
neighborhood?
trick-or-treating on our block, and it was with the people that you know. I remember my dad would take me to Baldwin Hills, which is like affectionately known as Black Beverly Hills. And at the time, you go up in Baldwin Hills, and that's where like some of the movers and shakers of old Hollywood were at, and they'd hand out king-size candy bars, and they could give you $5 for coming to their house.
It's like here in Salt Lake, you go to Federal Heights.
Right.
That's what I advise everybody. Take your kids up to Federal Heights, drop them off, come back and pick them up a few hours later, and they'll have the best candy.
All the
Right.
Central Heights people are loving
They
it right
love
now.
that when I say
We've been
that.
going to Tooele all this time.
Yeah, no, don't do that. Go to Federal Heights. So you trick or treated?
Yeah, a couple times.
Tell you not every year.
Yeah, well, because I remember like my pops would take me, and so like we would go out. And then as I got older, around 8 and 9, I started going out by myself. But then you just kind of put teenagers would still kick the kid's butt and just take his candy, and so it just became not safe.
Yeah.
So I just went to the store, and bought like all the candy that I wanted, and just stayed in and watched the Lakers win. So like, hey, it just made more sense to me. I was a very practical kid. I was like, oh, cool. Well, dress up like a devil ninja and get the crap kicked out of me, or go home and watch the Lakers like dunk on everybody, and eat a king-size candy bar with my pops. It was a no-brainer.
Sure. Well, but you do have an affinity for superheroes.
Yes.
You
Yes.
love the superhero movies. Who's your favorite? Is it
Deadpool. Deadpool is tattooed on me.
Yeah. So you like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And what is it about that? There's some sort of a living through a superhero that you like?
I would say Deadpool, and it's funny that we're on the topic of Deadpool, because Deadpool, if you read the comic, it is very gory. But however, he's a comedic character. He's a comedic superhero. He's kind of a good guy. He's a good guy, but at times he can be a bad guy. But he's hilarious, and he's seen a lot of violence, and so. And as a kid, I identified with that because I saw a lot of violence, and I didn't know how to deal with it except for humor. And so that was my way of, like, when I got into Deadpool, I was like, oh my gosh, this is really, like, I'm really into this just because of the type of character that he is. Mm-hmm. And so, but when I will go to a haunted house. I'm not saying I won't.
You still will.
I mean, if appropriate. I get nervous in a corn maze. I get nervous in high pressure situations like at Costco, where the older ladies like offer you like the free samples. That creeps me out. Because I feel like I'm gonna be there like for the next 20 minutes just talking about my life and listening to their kid about how he made Fiddler on the Roof. I don't care. Like it's just a lot of things I don't care about. So yeah.
I often find, just to add my little touch about haunted houses, I often just find them annoying.
Yeah.
The people are, these kids are jumping out at me, and I just find them annoying.
Right.
Would you just get out of my face, please? I want to just ask TaMara, growing up, did you grow up here?
No, I grew up in Missouri.
Were you why is that?
I got family from Missouri.
Oh.
So like, yeah.
You didn't always know you were a little witch, I guess, did you?
No, I didn't attach myself to the Wiccan path until I was probably 30.
That's awesome.
So as a young girl, what were your feelings about Halloween? And
It was all about the candy.
it was all about the candy. And it was just, you put on a costume just so you could go get the candy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There was nothing behind it. I didn't have any idea about the history of Halloween or why we light jack-o'-lanterns or anything like that.
Yeah.
So all about the candy.
Yeah. And talk about you still love Halloween.
I do, I know.
And you're youthful. When you were a little girl, you were obsessed with it as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's kind of like what we're all talking about obliquely in a way is human beings are complicated and they have sides to them, and you could call it your shadow self or something, but there was a dark part of me. I was an artist. I liked to paint dark things, and there was never really an outlet for that. When I would paint pictures that were sort of like dark, or when I was depressed or writing poetry, the advice I got was, why don't you write something uplifting or something positive? And I get that this is like a white Mormon girl privilege thing, but like I had no outlet to express sort of this other part of myself. And so I think I can respect you guys for the candy part of it, but it was never about the candy for me. It was always about finally, like, I can express this part of myself, and it's safe, and it's not really dangerous, and there's a whole culture built into it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And you can kind of give expression to that at least one day a year.
Yeah, at least one, and your mom signs off on it, you know, and the kids in your ward sign off on it, and it was just, I think it was a way for people, misfits, you know, to sort of be their true self and not feel like a misfit.
What about all of this stuff that kind of grows up around the LDS church? They've tried over the years a little bit, I think, and it's not just the LDS church, but but you find it a lot. They try to scare people about Halloween. With you're going to find poison in your candy,
Yeah.
razor blades in your candy.
It's like meth in the candy now. Did you see that?
Yeah, hypodermic needles in your Snickers bar. So let's all just go to the ward, the parking lot, and let's trunk or treat.
It's a bummer.
Yeah, it's a bummer.
Well, first of all, like, let's be real. Like, people are not going to be giving their drugs away. Like, do we not know anything about drugs? Like, they're not going to be giving them away.
Yeah, that really happens, actually. So,
Does it?
yes,
No,
it does.
No. That's not what you need to tell this audience.
No, it does. It does. It does happen.
No, Jay, come on. There's
Fact.
I did so
Fact.
much. I did a lot of research. There's hardly any hard evidence. There's not any hard evidence that shows any kids have been poisoned to death by drugs that people have given them at Halloween.
You'll find drugs easily.
What about razor blades, though?
No, that's just crazy. Now, that's just, like, I mean, first of all, nobody would waste a razor blade.
See? That's what I'm saying.
Have you bought Mach 3 razors?
They're expensive.
They're
That's true.
Incredibly expensive. So, like, I'm not wasting any of that.
I do think that, you know, that is part of it, but, like, I don't know. In our community, we kind of have this discussion. I remember being married for the first time and, like, having my own house, and it was like our first Halloween to give out candy, and I was so excited, and nobody came. And I'm like, what the heck? I bought like $400 worth of chocolate. It's because they were all over at the ward house, and I just remember feeling such a letdown. Like, when did we start doing this? Mm-hmm. And I think if you're an insider in any of these, it's certainly not specific to Mormonism. It's a very religious thing. But if you're an insider, it works really well, right? But if you're an outsider and you like move from out of state or something, or you're like me and you didn't get the memo, you kind of feel kind of left out of this trunk or treat thing. And I will say, like, anyone that's been to a trunk or treat can know that it is not safer than like going to a house. You got all these people backing in their cars and kids running everywhere. I don't buy the safety argument.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit, and we will come to the, I want to talk about the haunts and the tour, but one other thing I want to touch on, I was reading in TaMara's biography and about being a witch and about crystal balls, and you talk about the art of scrying, S-C-R-Y-I-N-G.
Right.
And you mentioned Joseph Smith in that discussion. And
I know him.
Yeah, just talk about that a little bit. I thought that was interesting.
Well, scrying is the art of looking at something in a reflection. Usually it's done with a convex or a concave surface, so either a bowl or a ball, and then it's covered in water or oil so that you get reflections off of it. When I read my crystal balls, I have a whole set of them that I work with, and then I use a cauldron of fire to bring movement to the images. And that makes it dynamic. When you look at the images, you then decipher them based on what spirit is telling you and your own experience. And this is what Joseph Smith did when he was working with the seer stones, is that my understanding is he put them in a hat, and he put his face down into the hat, and he scribed the stones to get messages.
And they just, recently the LDS Church just...
Released an essay.
And they actually had some of the pictures of some of the seer stones that Joseph Smith said that he used to help him translate the Book of Mormon, was it?
Yeah, I think of what a lot of Mormons don't know, and I've been lucky enough, like with my job and the people that I interact with, to know is Mormons have a long tradition of the mystical and
Mysticism,
the magical. Yeah. Joseph Smith especially, like if he were to see sort of our attitudes about magic today, I don't think you would recognize them, because, you know, he used dowsing rods, and his mother especially was very much into mysticism, and she had her fortune read, and they were looking for treasure all the time, and that used to be considered in the Mormon church like an anti-Mormon lie when the word treasure digger came out. But, you know, professional history has shown us that the Smiths were super into this stuff, and there's this book about Mormons and the cross and how we stopped wearing the cross, and there's this scene of Joseph Smith recording in his journal where he would lay with his arms out and have each counselor lay on his, like a cross in the forest, and they would recite incantations. And we just have this long tradition. And in fact, you can look this up, in 1903, I believe, the Beehive House used to do haunted houses. And they had a fortune teller, and they had zombies in the Beehive. Yeah,
Well,
it's
we weren't
fantastic.
the first one.
Well, you weren't the first, Cydney.
You need to look it up. It's
Joseph Smith
Artist Parcel. She's a Mormon
did it.
historian, and she has a blog called Keep It Pitchin' In, and she has this like invitation from 1903, and it's brilliant. I mean, they have spooks, and they encourage the kids to dress up and cover their faces. So it's been a real shift from our past to where we are now.
I remember when I was a kid, that just stirred a memory in me. When I was a kid, they had a spook alley in the cultural hall of the Ogden 40th Ward when I was a kid. And it was, you know, you'd go into the cultural hall and they'd go up onto the stage, and it was all dark, and you know, there were a bowl of grapes for eyeballs, and, you know, that kind of stuff.
Because we like to pass the same things around over and over again.
But I remember they had a spook alley at Halloween in the Ward Cultural Hall.
Did you do those?
There you go. No,
As a kid?
I don't remember doing those, but I remember we had a big house. We had this big, long hallway, and all of our bedrooms and the bookcases and things were on both sides. So I do remember creating a little spook alley, and our neighbors would come over, and we would scare each other out of our bedrooms. So we have a long history of it in our family, too.
Dr. White, you have a question or a reminiscence about Halloween?
Well, I do have a question. I was wondering, part of it here in Utah, could it be, I was thinking what Lindsay was talking about, community building in some ways, that especially with thinking trunk or treat, or, you know, it's the push for having know your neighbors, that seems like that could be part of why Halloween may be such a big deal here. Not just the candy, not just, not just dressing up and trying to get into a darker side or anything, but it's a way, it's an excuse for coming together. And especially I think of the trunk or treats, not just here, but other places where it seems to be more religious organizations that are organizing those type of activities for their kids.
Well, and Mormons are used to going door to door.
True.
I kind of would have to agree, because when I've lived in Utah for 12 years, so everything you guys just were talking about for the past 5 minutes, I have no idea what you guys are talking about. And but when I first got here, trunk or treat was kind of like, you know, and I was like, what is that?
Yeah.
I never heard of that. But, and I would have to agree. Comparing California to my experience in California to my experience in Utah, there's definitely a sense of community when it comes to Halloween here. And it's interesting that I never maybe picked up on that. And I think it's getting to know your neighbors, because I remember as a child, you didn't want to know your neighbors, so you didn't.
Yeah.
And so that's interesting.
Yeah, and there are a lot of neighborhoods around here. My neighborhood is not one of them, but there are neighborhoods around here. I mean, you go to Federal Heights, you go to the Harvard-Yale neighborhood, you go to a lot of those neighborhoods, and the trick-or-treating experience there
Legendary.
is very neighborly. I mean,
That's pretty cool.
You know, the parents go out with, one parent will go out with the kids, and, you know, like they'll take a wine glass with them. And,
Yeah,
you know,
seen
and
that.
they'll you know,
I
there'll be
want to do that. I want to go with the wine.
Yeah, and then some of
Get
some
on
of
your
the
ninja costume.
some of the
Yeah.
houses where they are wine drinkers. You know, they'll know which house it is, and they'll give them a little pour of wine along with the.
You're
you know.
likely never going to find that at
I
a trunk or
see.
treat that I know of. If you do,
That's great.
That's drunker treat.
Yeah, drunken, yeah.
treat. I love it.
Drunken street, yes, yes.
Yeah, but it's very neighborly.
Well, I think that kind of to answer his question, not just Utah, because it's a question I got asked all the time, like, why is Halloween so popular and why are these haunted houses so popular? Because we went to China and started both Disneyland's haunted attraction there now and Ocean Park, another theme park. And now this holiday is all over the world, and it wasn't before. But I think not just in Utah, but it's a holiday that is not a religious, you know, it's not associated with a particular religion. Nobody says you can't do it yet. But you can dress up as a
Devil
ninja,
yeah.
devil ninja, and go to the
Diablo
bank for the
ninja.
day. And everyone at the bank is dressed up as Superman and whatever they're dressed up as. And it's just this opportunity to be a kid for a day and to be whatever you want. And it's sort of a fantasy. And we got to do that, you know, 2 months out of the year. These kids could be, you know, zombies and whatever they were, but chainsaw wielding, whatever. But I think it's popular because it's just a fun holiday and you can escape for a day and pretend and be whatever you want to be.
I do it,
So-
but that's the thing, though. You don't need Halloween to dress up and be whatever you want.
Now
Especially-
you don't.
Yeah, 'cause
Now
we're
you
like,
don't.
We live in the geekiest state in America per capita. Science has proved it. Whatever.
Oh,
I
we
don't
got
know.
issues, Utah.
Yeah, but I mean, like we have all the Comic Cons and the fantasy cons and the Salt Lake Comic Con and the gaming con. You can just cosplay with anime bonsai.
But those have just started in
I know,
the
but
last
you know what? I have a
4 or
Lando
5 years.
Calrissian cape in my car.
Jay,
You
For
should
no
not
reason.
say
don't
that,
tell
Garrett.
people. Don't tell people these things.
I don't know. I have no problem telling people these things. I have no problem because I wear it as a poncho, as a jacket. I use it as a blanket when I'm cold.
You
And
can't
you know
argue
what?
with that logic right there.
Like it's just like you just be what. I mean, like I don't
But
need
it
to
is-
wait a day to be. If I, you know, sometimes have you worn a Spider-Man costume?
I know, but so even that's changing.
Oh,
Like it
it's so
used to be
comfortable.
Halloween, you could dress up and that was it. And then it became, you know, edgier, and those kids who got all their teeth done, they were like that every day. And then haunted houses got really popular, and people were. I remember I used to wear colored wigs all the time. I had this purple wig on one day, and this girl asked me, she said, "Is that your real hair?" And we just looked at each other
Wow.
like, "Are you kidding? Like, who would have purple hair? Like, what?" And now everybody has purple,
Yeah.
orange, beautiful, red, leopard print. It doesn't matter, and it's not just Halloween, it's every day. So now it's just free
Yeah.
for all.
But you said like it was
Game on.
You said it's like, and I think that's an important part. Like, Halloween started out as an American holiday, and Mormonism is an American religion, and even though Mormonism is like global, it's very focused on Utah, right? So that's why it gets transplanted in other areas to sometimes to international Mormons' annoyance, you know. Like, but have you heard about like there are like evangelical hell houses, right? That are like
Yeah.
the anti.
Yeah, that's
that's
I
kinda
had
crazy.
not thought about that until you. I should have thought about that in connection with the show, but they'll do anti-abortion ones. These evangelical
you been to
hell
one?
houses.
Not a lot. I think they're kind of a trend that's not.
I haven't
happening
heard much
anymore.
about them in recent years.
Have they
but
ever been
they're-
in Utah?
I don't think so.
Not that I know of, but they're designed to put the fear of God into the kids that go through.
Yeah, I remember my
kinda
mom tried to
crazy,
take me
yeah.
to it was a Hallelujah on Halloween or something like that. It was like Hallelujah or something. It was like something that they tried to do.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, no, it was something I can't remember, but it was a
Mother
play.
Why didn't I
religious.
think
Yeah,
of
it was a
that?
play on thing, and I mean,
Hallelujah.
You know, the other thing that drives anything is economics. So this is now surpassed Christmas.
Yep, it's a
as
Hallmark
as
holiday.
the biggest.
in that.
It's like 90%
Holiday.
my fault.
Yeah.
That part.
So
But we celebrate some
so
ridiculous.
economics has driven this as
We
much.
celebrate
too.
some ridiculous days in America. We celebrate Columbus Day.
Yeah,
That's just
not a good one.
ridiculous.
Mother's Day.
Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. My mom watching this right now. She's
I'm
gonna
gonna hear about that one.
No, but I mean, like, we do celebrate some pretty
Father's
Hallmark
Day.
money grab
I hate
holidays. I don't get it.
Valentine's Day, it's like nobody can win on that one.
I want to quickly talk to you, Cydney, about the tour that you went on or are in the midst of, about seeing all these other haunted houses around the country that are kind of the spawn of what you started here. Have they become, are they mostly something you like, or have they become too much? Have they become extreme? Are they, some of them, too over the edge? What are they like?
Well, I left my haunted attraction 8 years ago. Very, very successful. I thought we were just getting started at 70,000 people going through in a season. So it was a life decision I made, and some of it had to do with not being able to reconcile, this is my business, and you know, I talk about God a lot, so I was able to mix the two, but there was a day when I felt like I couldn't. Anyway, so I left, but I'm receiving an award this year, a Lifetime Achievement Award, so really my point of going around is just to reconnect with some friends. And all of these people came to my haunted attraction. I used to do workshops for other people in the industry, and so I just wanted to kind of see them more than anything. But yeah, it's really changed as far as I think they feel like they need to create something new and scarier and bigger, and the whole hands-on thing is very popular now. So you can be touched, you can be grabbed, you can be taken out of the show.
If you give permission.
I mean, there's all kinds of different levels of that, but that's really universal. I went to one where he does Naked and Afraid, so you can go through the haunted house in your underwear. And actually, it actually sounds kind of fun. It was really cold, or else I would have probably done it just for fun. But they touch you with feathers, and you know, it's interesting. But it's this kind of concept and these extreme haunts. And frankly, they were things that we really couldn't do here. Now they're doing them, and I'm not sure why the inspectors have somehow decided this was okay, but we were really strict. You've gone the naked one?
No. Oh, are they doing that here?
Tell us more about that.
Not here.
No, I've done the hands-on stuff here.
And I actually thought that was kind of, because they still say you can't touch the actors, but they will touch you. And I actually think it made a difference where they could, you know, brush up against you and grab your hair, and we couldn't do that. We couldn't touch any of our customers.
I've been through one where they'll slam you against the wall.
There's different levels of it, yeah. But
can I ask a question about that?
Yeah, and there's really super high gore. I haven't been to them, but they've just taken it in every direction.
And also
now.
Mechanical things that are very expensive.
Unbelievable, the kind of things I've seen. In the last 8 years since I left, the entire industry has exploded, and just the creativity in all this stuff. We were doing really amazing stuff because my friends are from LA. So, but now the industry is just amazing, the kind of stuff I'm seeing. So.
Did you want to ask a question?
Yeah.
I was just curious because, you know, Mormons were big into like the slippery slope argument. Like, you know, if you do this, then that's not going to be enough, and then you'll need this, and then you'll need this. Is that what's happening in the industry, that like people just don't get scared anymore, and so like it's going to constantly, like, what's the end goal?
Sure. I mean, I did a haunted house, and I did it somewhat unwillingly at the beginning, and I had to learn to love what I did, and what I knew I was doing was helping these kids, and it was a really kind of funky way of doing it. We did an amazing business, an amazing haunted attraction, but I think that there is a desensitization of those, you know, and they're pushing the envelope more and more and more. So I don't know. I wouldn't go to a haunted house. I don't like them. I don't like the idea of them. I don't like horror movies.
You're like, no, music, wrong.
No, you know what? I just go. I've had so much fun going through, and I've been periscoping and taping, and just I get scared really easy. So I've made it just about seeing my friends and celebrating their success. A lot of them are 25 years. This would have been 37 years for Rocky Point. So it's just been a personal thing for me, and for that reason, once again, kind of like the kids, it's been easy for me to enjoy it. But otherwise, I would never go. It's not my thing.
Will you ever get back into the business?
No, I mean, I would never have left what I had I ever considered getting back in. But I'm glad I did what I did. I don't have any regrets, and I loved it.
Jay?
I'll go back into business with you. I have an idea for a haunted house.
Okay.
Because
everybody has an idea for a haunted house.
but this one's just real. Like, instead of the blood and gore, it's just real life. Like, you just walk in and you get, like, you know, there's a second mortgage. You know, there's an unexpected pregnancy. There's student loans.
Not a bad idea.
Like, I mean, like, it's just people are just, that's a real haunted house.
Very good. Jay, what are you going to do Halloween? What will you be doing on Halloween?
Whatever sports team that I
Eating
like,
a candy bar.
I will be eating a candy bar
Yeah.
in my devil ninja costume by myself.
TaMara, what will you be doing on Halloween?
Friday the 30th, there is a Samhain ritual that's open to the public at Crones Hollow,
Which is located where?
2470 South Main Street.
And what will you be doing? Lindsay?
Taking my children trick-or-treating.
Yeah? How many do you have?
3.
3, and you'll just leading them around there a little by their hands?
Yeah, we're so excited.
Yeah. And what will you be doing?
On October 30th, I'm in Baton Rouge at a haunted house called the 13th Gate. You can check that out online. Amazing haunted attraction. On the 31st, Halloween night, I'll be in Atlanta, Georgia at Netherworld. Supposedly the best haunted house in the world.
I want to thank my guests, Cydney Neil, Lindsay Hansen-Park, TaMara Gold, and Jay Whittaker. I want to thank the technical staff, Dave Peterson, Jordan Dela Cruz, everybody here at 50 West, Mike Waldvogel, John Rivera. Show produced by Dylan Allred and Corey O'Brien. Next show will be Wednesday, November 18th. We'll be talking about guns. Please like What Do You Think Utah on Facebook. Follow us at Think Utah on Twitter, or visit our website, thinkutah.org. See you next month. Guns. Bye.
Guns.